My name is Kristina Maki. I am one of the nurse educators here at MNA. I'm new in the role as of 2 months ago. I was a nursing assistant while I got my LPN. I was an LPN while I got my RN. I've been practicing as an RN for 20 years. And I just went back to school 7 years ago, and got my graduate degree. So I have a degree in nursing education. I taught nursing education for a couple years before coming here, and I still practice as a peds nurse. So the stuff that I'm presented to you comes not only from an M&A perspective, but also as a practicing nurse perspective, and kind of my views on the nurse compact as that practicing nurse and also as an M&A staff member. The Nurse Licensure Compact was originally developed in the early 2000s. It came about for a couple different reasons. So there was this national push to make things more uniform across different states for not only nursing but for other professions. And then as a nursing profession, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing was looking at the practice of nursing, and they were seeing that nurses, it was hard for nurses to travel from state to state, and also there was this new thing, telehealth, where nurses in one state were practicing in other places remotely, and that kind of constituted some issues. So they looked and developed this Nurse Compact Act that allows nurses from one state to practice in another state a little bit more, they believe, more seamlessly. I think there's 33 states as of right now. Benefit is if you are, for instance, a Wisconsin nurse, you can have this compact license, which allows you to travel to other states that have the nurse compact and practice in their state.
Right.
So that's the benefit.
Yeah.
It's you can travel from state to state to state to state.
Right.
The risk is you are, let's say again, let's take this Wisconsin nurse. I'm from Wisconsin. So if you went to school in Wisconsin and you got, your Wisconsin license and then got the compact license, and you go down and you're practicing in Iowa. You're practicing under Iowa's Board of Nursing Nurse Practice Act, right?
Right.
But you've learned the Wisconsin Practice Act, and so your practice might be differently defined. There might be different rules or regulations when you're practicing in other states that you're not aware of, and different from what you learned. So, take myself, working in Minnesota. My license is in Minnesota. I live in Wisconsin. So if I was to decide to practice in Wisconsin, that would become my new home state. So I need to apply to the Wisconsin Board of Nursing for that to be my new licensure. And the application is called a licensure by endorsement. It means that I apply to the Wisconsin Board of Nursing, I fill out a form, and I pay a fee. And they check through this database. They check on my license in Minnesota and also where I first got my license. For me, it's the same. And just make sure that everything is okay, and then I'm granted a license. So it's not that difficult. So let's say again, I've got my Wisconsin license, right? I graduated, I got my licensure in Wisconsin, and I got that compact license, okay?
Right.
So I'm practicing under that compact license, and I can travel to different compact states and practice. But I decide to move. My actual primary residence moves to Iowa, okay? I have to go through the exact same process. So I still have to apply for endorsement by the Iowa Board of Nursing because that's going to be my new home state. if travel nursing is your cup of tea and that's what you want to do, and you're worried about the process, well, it's really not that hard because you're going to be working with an agency. It's not like you go, oh, can I come down for 4 weeks and play in Florida, right?
Right.
You're working with an agency that's going to help you go through the process. I mean, you yourself have to apply to these different, but they'll help you with the process.
Yeah.
So in filling out forms, nurses know that stuff backwards and forwards, you know, or charting like that.
Yeah.
And as far as the fee, a lot of agencies, a lot of travel agencies are going to pay for that license for you to go wherever it is that you're going, right? So MNA has some concerns about the compact. So here's the compact states, right? So I'm speaking not as an MNA member, but as a practicing nurse member. Here's the average salary. So let's say hypothetically that Minnesota becomes a compact state. We get an influx potentially of out-of-state nurses, which might, so MNA is a labor organization. They argue and advocate for one of the things, nurses' salary, amongst many other things. If we have a lot of outside nurses, our advocacy might not be as well. Potentially, hypothetically, you could see nursing salary go down. Another one of the concerns about the compact for Minnesota, MNA was very strong in advocating for continuing education credit. As a nurse in Minnesota, every 2 years you have to have 24 hours of contact hours of continuing education to maintain your license. Not every state has the same continuing education requirements. If we learn how important contact hours are to continue our education, then are we weakening our nursing practice? Another one is that if we're saying that this is going to help alleviate some of the workplace shortage, you know, the nursing shortage, it doesn't, right? It just transfers nurses and shuffles the puzzle pieces instead of really providing a situation or a solution to nurses or getting more nurses.
Right.
So there's that. We talked about the fact that the Practice Act might be different where you practice, right? So what happens to the discipline or the investigation of that nurse that has something go wrong in that one individual state? Wisconsin nurse practicing in Iowa messes up. Iowa might take and start an investigation on them and do something against their licensure there. Wisconsin, as the home state, might do something against that licensure there. Might be different, might be the same. All the compact states might, you know, maybe in the past I had worked in Nebraska. They might get wind of this investigation and do something against your license. So there's a question of which state is responsible for discipline. So Minnesota has this kind of neat opportunity for states that surround Minnesota. So the Dakotas, Iowa, and Wisconsin can apply for a border license. If I graduated from Wisconsin school and live in Hudson and I wanted to practice in the cities, I could apply for this border license. I don't need to go through the endorsement and pay a new fee. It allows me, I have a form that I fill out that states, you know, here's my license in Wisconsin, here's where I'm going to be working. It has to be at a hospital or healthcare agency in Minnesota, but it allows me to practice with my Wisconsin license in Minnesota, and that applies to Iowa, North Dakota, and South Dakota. The other thing that Minnesota has as far as allowing other nurses to practice is, I think it's through the Department of Health, if we had like a major emergency. So we had the 35W bridge collapse and let's say hypothetically we had tons and tons of people that were injured. This law allows emergency personnel, so nurses, to come in from other states and practice in Minnesota without having to go through and apply for licensure in Minnesota.